Good evening. The Stanislaus Local Agency Formation Commission is now in session. Today is Wednesday, July 26, 2023. It is 6 p.m. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You got to understand, I don't know it's right.
I'm not either. I'm old. Introductions of commissioners. We'll start here on my right.
Terry Withrow, County Member.
Richard O'Brien, City Member.
Vito Chiesa, County Member.
Amy Blue-Black, City Member.
Bill Berryhill, Public Member.
Jennifer Vieira, Commission Clerk.
Rob Terrell, LAFCO Council.
Sarah Little-Penny, Executive Officer.
Javier Camarena, Assistant Executive Officer.
Thank you. This time we'll start public comment period. We'll paper comment on items not on the agenda, and all persons wishing to speak are asked to speak for no more than 3 minutes and directly to the commission, not to the other members of the public. Do we have some public comments already filled out? Milt Treeweiler.
Good evening, Milt Treeweiler. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Board. Good evening, staff, and good evening, public. I'm a lifetime member here of Stanislaus County. And Stanislaus County and our nation are at a turning point, and we need to plan well if we want our children and grandchildren to have a good life. There are too many that don't realize that what we do today has major consequences on the future. We need to be careful of our descent so our descendants will not be forced to suffer unnecessarily. They will have to suffer if we make bad decisions. Sometimes we act like we're in control of everything, and what we do has no consequences, when in fact all of humanity is subject to our environmental conditions and must learn to respect and work with the laws of physics and nature. We all have to remember that we live on a planet that's not getting any bigger. We cannot survive without clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and food to eat. Stanislaus County is a very special place. We can't take our prime farmland for granted. Stanislaus County has prime farmland and the water from our irrigation systems to grow food for 200 years or more. If we were to put houses and buildings on all this farmland, we would never be able to grow food on it again. We need to think about this very carefully and protect this prime farmland so our descendants will have food to eat. How hard is it for us to understand these facts and reality when the evidence is all around us? Stanislaus County has plenty of room on the west side near Interstate 5 to build all the houses that we will need for years to come. That's a good place for building houses. Around our interior cities is a bad place. We need to protect the farmland around our interior cities and develop the west side along the I-5 corridor. We want to be sensible people and preserve our prime farmland so our descendants will have good, healthy food to eat. Think of our children. We have to think about our children and our grandchildren and all of our descendants. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Barney Eggers.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Barney Eggers. I live at 7730 McHenry Avenue, which is out by the bridge. It's in the unincorporated area on the western boundary of this proposed Riverwalk project. At the May meeting, you were informed that we would be submitting a notice of intent to circulate a petition. The petition is to establish urban limits for riverbank growth at the present western boundary, which I believe is in the Coffee Road vicinity. Voter signatures are now being gathered on the petition. This is to put it on the 2024 ballot. This measure would put the decision for decision-making in the hands of riverbank citizens who would be majorly affected by Riverwalk. Should the Riverwalk proposal come before this commission prior to the 2024 election, I ask, my wife and I request that you vote no on the Riverwalk proposal. We want to see this go to the ballot and let the people in Riverbank vote on it. We believe homes should be built on lesser soils. As Milt Truewaller just mentioned, they're plentiful in other areas. And covering up 1,000 or 1,500 acres of prime farmland would be an environmental injustice, in my opinion. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Well, I have no more cards. Is there anyone else wishing to speak publicly before we go forward? Seeing none, we're going to move forward. Correspondence. Before we start the meeting today, we have received several correspondence in the last hour, which will be pertaining to our item 6A, Zachariah Baldwin Master Plan Reorganization. I am asking the commissioners to read before we move forward with any other, and once we do, we'll put these into the record. So if you can, take a minute or two to read it. You have to read today. I got a speed reader. Okay, you got 4 minutes. submit these for the record. Do I have to submit each one? Okay.
Reject.
True that.
All right, we're going to proceed with correspondence. We just received the package that all the commissioners have had a chance to read, and I would like to submit these into the package. This is by consent, correct? Any objections? No objections. They're submitted into your package. Correspondence?
So that was all the correspondence that we had, and just to be clear for those in the audience, it was a letter received from Del Puerto Water District, one from Jennifer Gonzalez, and then some additional correspondence received as of today from City of Patterson, Supervisor Chance Condit, Assemblymember Juan Alanis, Dave White from Opportunity Stanislaus, Keith Schneider, Keystone Corporation, and from Bill Sarasqueta, a property owner.
Thank you. All right, going to item 4, declaration of conflict of interest or disqualifications. Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar, which consists of the minutes of 24 May 2023 LAFCO meeting. Is there any recommendations?
Move to accept?
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving to item 6, public hearing. This is Municipal Service Review number 2023-02, Sphere of Influence Modification 2023-02, and LAFCO application number 2023-01, Zacharias Baldwin Master Plan Reorganization to the City of Patterson.
Good evening, Javier Camarena with LAFCO. As Chairman O'Brien said, the item before you this evening is Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence Modification number 2023-02 and LAFCO application 2023-01, Zacharias Baldwin Master Plan Reorganization to the City of Patterson. The project is a request to annex 1,375 acres to the City of Patterson and detach the area from the West Stanislaus Fire Protection District, Del Puerto Water District, Patterson Irrigation District, and West Stanislaus Irrigation District. The proposal also includes a sphere of influence expansion and municipal service review update. The proposal has 3 areas. Area A, which is about 1,279 acres and is generally located north of the city limits, right here just south of Zacharias Road. This part of the proposal is part of a greater master plan, which I'll discuss later in the presentation, but this is also known as the Zacharias Master Plan area. Area B, which is a recharge basin, and Area C, which is the Baldwin area, the Baldwin Master Plan area. Patterson recently adopted the Zacharias and Baldwin Master Plan and General Plan Amendment to accommodate growth in the proposed annexation areas. This is a land use diagram of the, or land use map of the Zacharias Master Plan area. The area will include residential neighborhoods, a mixed-use town center, commercial center, light industrial, business park, schools, ranchettes, and open space. In total, the Zacharias area will accommodate 5,086 residential units, 855,000 square feet of retail, and 6,710,000 square feet of business park uses. This is the Baldwin Master Plan area, which will include a total of 305 dwelling units. Actions needed by the commission this evening in order to approve the proposal. The first would be to consider the environmental documentation prepared by the City of Patterson, adopt the sphere expansion, municipal service review, and the related determinations, and approve the reorganization which would include annexation to the City of Patterson and detachment of the districts we recently mentioned. Government code requires a municipal service review be prepared when modifying a sphere of influence, along with written determinations. In order to approve a sphere of influence amendment, the commission must make additional determinations related to land use, open space, facilities and services, and identifying disadvantaged unincorporated communities. A discussion on the municipal service review and sphere amendment determinations can be found on pages 2 through 4 of the staff report. Oops, excuse me. Government code also requires several factors to be considered by LAFCO when evaluating a reorganization. The factors feature items related to proposed services and facilities, effects on agriculture, and consistency with government code. A discussion of these factors can be found on pages 4 through 13 of the staff report. So during the referral period, staff received a letter from Patterson and West Stanislaus irrigation districts. The letter states that the districts have concerns regarding anticipated impacts to groundwater and the overall sustainability of the groundwater basin, as the area has been historically irrigated with surface water. We did receive a response from Patterson. The response pointed out that sections of its EIR state that currently a majority of irrigation use in the area is occurring with groundwater. Ultimately, the area will use less acre feet per year than the current demand, and the city has also noted that the total future water demand was considered in the groundwater sustainability plan prepared by prepared for the city. Staff also received a letter from the West Stanislaus Fire Protection District requesting that annexation proceed without detachment from the fire district to avoid impacts to revenue. City Patterson has responded to that letter as well. The city has responded noting that the area's need for the fire service is going to be at an urban level, and the city of Patterson provides that type of service. The city also stated that the impact loss of service to the district is a smaller impact, less than 0.5% of the district's territory, than that of the amount of increase the city will receive if annexed, which would be an area of 20% of the city. Staff also received letters from property owners. These letters, some of them are in your, well, actually all of them are in your correspondence. These related to potential loss of water rights, issues with master plan design, conflicts with agriculture, noise, and traffic concerns. So the following slides are going to discuss more of LAFCO's policies, and this is where much of the discussion in the staff report takes place is regarding LAFCO's policies. LAFCO's agriculture preservation policy states that the commission may consider approval of a proposal if there is sufficient evidence demonstrating the following. And the demonstration of these items are over the next few slides. So the first one we're going to go over is that the first is that insufficient alternative land is available within the existing sphere of influence or city. The city's plan for ag preservation acknowledges that there's currently about 1,627 acres vacant in the city, which is roughly 30% the size of the city of Patterson. The city's plan states that there are no alternative sites that provide space and lot configurations, provide easy access to roads, allow for such phasing and buffering, and that are within proximity to I-5. And this is just a slide showing currently the city of Patterson. This area in pink, which is kind of transparent, is the existing city limits. And these three areas in the dotted yellow lines are the last three annexations that LAFCO has approved with the city of Patterson. Part of the inventory that the city provided described the West Patterson area as 90% built, the villages of Patterson as currently being developed, and Arambel as also currently being developed. So this is just to kind of show you the different annexations that have gone on over the past couple of decades. The next item the commission would need to consider is, the next consideration requires that for spheres of influence, that the additional territory will not exceed the 20-year period for probable growth or 10 years within a proposed primary area. And for annexation proposals, that the development that's being proposed be imminent. Proposed development from the proposed development before you today is expected to occur over a 20-year time period through 2 phases. The final EIR states that the entire master plan area is needed in order to ensure urban services and infrastructure can be provided. The EIR states that there is a precedent for this approach as shown in Patterson's most recent annexations, where all the territory was annexed in their entirety and are still being developed. So that would kind of go back to that previous slide where those areas were annexed all at once. The next item the commission must consider is if the loss of ag lands will be minimized based on a selected agricultural preservation strategy. As part of the master plan approval, a mitigation measure has been placed on the master plan requiring 1-to-1 agricultural mitigation for each acre of important farmland converted to a non-agricultural use. The next consideration the commission should examine is if the proposal will result in planned, orderly, and efficient use of land and services. The city states that the city has approved a master development plan providing logical and efficient growth patterns through phasing. The city's policies and plans will also ensure urban development facilities and services will expand orderly and efficiently. The next policies, the next policies we're going to discuss are sphere of influence policies in our policies and procedures. Sphere of influence policy 1 describes the sphere as an area eligible for annexation between a 0 to 20-year period and a primary area as being eligible between a 0 to 10-year period. Policy 2 describes the area between a primary area and a sphere of influence line as a 10 to 20-year area, and also describe it as a transition area, and shall not be considered eligible for annexation and urban services. The current proposal is to expand the sphere and annex over 1,200 acres. There is no primary or transition area, which is intended to preclude urban sprawl and guide orderly growth. LAFCO Policy 20 states that the Commission encourages logical boundaries and proposals that do not create islands and eliminate islands, corridors, or other distortion of boundaries. The Baldwin area, the area that's to the south, area is also known as Area C, may be considered illogical and growth-inducing as it would be surrounded on three sides by unincorporated county. Government code and LAFCO policy both identify preference for development of existing land within a city's limits and sphere of influence prior to additional boundary expansions. City of Patterson's general plan also prefers infill development. Currently, the city has a significant amount of inventory within its city limits and sphere. However, the city has stated that none of this inventory is as large as the master plan, which meets their intent for large-scale residential and industrial development. Pursuant to CEQA, the City of Patterson prepared an EIR for the Zacharias Baldwin Master Plan, which addressed the proposed reorganization. LAFCO, as a responsible agency, must consider the environmental documentation prepared by the city, and if approved, the commission must make findings related to the EIR and statement of overriding considerations. Should the commission deny the proposal, the action is considered exempt from CEQA. Just to summarize the items we discussed in the presentation, specifically to LAFCO policies. As mentioned, a sphere of influence represents the boundary around a local agency that is eligible for annexation and extension of services within a 20-year period. The primary area represents annexation within a 10-year period. The applicant has indicated that full build-out is expected over the course of 20 years. It does not appear to substantiate the need for the entire 1,275 acres to be annexed and does not align with the policy intent for logical and orderly growth. Government code, commission policies, and the city's general plan encourage development of existing vacant lands within the city and sphere of influence prior to expansion of the city or sphere. Areas of vacant and underutilized land have been identified and could accommodate future demands over the next 10 to 20 years. So, staff's recommendation can be found on page 18 of the staff report, which includes denial without prejudice of the proposal. A draft resolution has been attached as option 1. Should the commission approve the project, the commission would approve the option 2 resolution, which certifies that the commission has considered the CEQA documentation, adopts the MSR, sphere update, and determinations, approves a reorganization consisting of annexation to the City of Patterson and detachment from the Del Porto Water District, Patterson Irrigation District, West Stanislaus Irrigation District, and West Stanislaus Fire Protection District, and directs the executive officer to move forward with the protest proceedings. This concludes my presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Are there any questions of staff before we proceed? Okay. At this time, I'm going to open for a public hearing where members of the public may address this item. Do I have members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, yeah, I do have speaker cards. Sorry. Joel Andrews, I'm sorry.
Oh, this.
Chair, do you mind if I go first before Joel? He could come up with me.
Is this a tag team? Okay, fight it out amongst yourself.
All right. Well, good evening, Commissioner and Chair. My name is Ken Irwin. I'm the city manager for the city of Patterson. I've met most of you over the last 10 years that I've been working for the city. I'd like to start off by thanking LAFCO Commission and staff. I think they did a very thorough report, and we do appreciate that. We've been working on this project for the last 5 years, using top consultants throughout California. We wanted to make certain that this project was analyzed and designed in a very structured fashion to make sure it is sustainable and complemented our existing city. At this time, and as the project was proceeding, we completed 7 different master plans that included sewer, water, storm drain, transportation, recreation, public safety. We went through the whole gambit to make sure that this fit with the entire city and not just in a very small area. We wanted to make sure it was very well coordinated. Our goal has been to make sure our citizens are very well, see a very thought out master plan project they can be proud of and works well with our existing facilities and public safety services. We have plenty of city staff and consultants here tonight. If there's questions, we want to make sure that you are well aware of the entire project and feel comfortable moving forward with your decision. So with that, I'm going to tag out and have Joel come on up.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. It's good to be with you. I'm Joel Andrews, the City Planner for the City of Patterson. First, I'd like to sincerely thank Sarah, Javier, and Jennifer for their assistance and work on this application. On behalf of Patterson's Mayor, City Council, and City staff, we're excited to have this project in front of you. The Zacharias and Baldwin Ranch projects include a variety of land uses. There's a range of residential densities, job opportunities, complete neighborhoods and amenities, and some exciting and attractive new places that are to come. For planning purposes, it's a tremendous opportunity to be able to work with a large area, which allows for a more meaningful and dynamic community in the future with areas that will interact synergistically with the existing community, consistent with the city's general plan. The City of Patterson recognizes that this is a large area and probably larger than a lot of other applications that come before you. However, I would ask that you consider a few items. First, Javier has brought up a slide. As you can see, the bulk of the project is surrounded on three sides by the existing city limits, with Zacharias Road, the right-of-way, forming the northern boundary. There are some outliers which have been included for some specific reasons related to groundwater qualities and things like that. But the project, but the project's layout would connect the northwestern and northeastern edges of the city, providing a logical extension of the growth of the city up to a reasonable boundary. We have considered other configurations, but have not found one that meets the same criteria in a satisfactory way. While Patterson could expand into other areas to the south and east within the existing sphere of influence, those areas represent very small parcels, and owners of these areas have had some difficulty assembling other neighbors with the same desire to enter into the city or the resources to make that happen. This project, on the other hand, is consistent with the infrastructure master plans that Ken Irwin just mentioned of the overall general plan of the City of Patterson. These plans include the proposed areas and discuss storm drain basins in specific locations to recharge the groundwater and new trunk lines providing water, sewer, and storm drainage flow. These improvements represent a significant cost that's required at the front end of the project. And to enjoy the economies of scale and enable the financing of these projects, it will be necessary for the whole project to move forward. Second, Patterson sits in a unique position within the county. The city's business parks have enjoyed tremendous success, providing employment for thousands of people across the county, and providing tax dollars across the county, not just to Patterson. A quarter of this area before you is designated for expansion of that business park. In our experience, the business park uses tend to take up large chunks of land at a time, and we expect that to be the case here as well. Third, Patterson is the fastest growing city in the county. There are a few growth pressures on the City of Patterson that may be different than other cities, or at least to the same degree. We have a large number of residents who commute to the Bay Area. And even though Patterson is farther from the Bay Area than cities like Lathrop and Manteca, the ability to hop onto I-5 and get to the Bay Area faster than they would from those other cities is a prime factor for people moving into our area and driving up demand for housing in our area. Another is the business park itself. The business park triggers the need for employees, to serve workforce housing to serve those businesses, and that's a continual demand on the city. As we speak with businesses who are considering relocating to Patterson, one of the primary questions that we hear is, where are my employees going to live? And we typically provide a study showing there are hundreds of thousands of people who could commute readily to the area, but what these businesses really want to see is that there's housing nearby. And so it's been critical to have housing projects that we can point to within the City of Patterson and say, yes, your employees will be able to live nearby. So we anticipate that we'll be able to grow into these areas at a relatively quick pace. The city currently has two major housing developments underway. One is the Villages of Patterson on the east side of the city, and the second is a smaller subdivision on the west side of the city. The Villages of Patterson project is well underway, with most of the project area either constructed, under construction, or it has approvals that we expect to, projects that we expect to start within the next year or two. Infrastructure for the second subdivision is almost completely in place, and we expect to have construction of homes starting later this year with that area wrapping up pretty quickly. These projects are moving fast, and we anticipate that they will fill out quickly, leaving the city with few other opportunities to provide housing in the future. And fourth and finally, through the Regional Housing Needs Assessment process, the State Department of Housing and Community Development has mandated that Patterson plan for an additional 3,716 homes during the next 8-year cycle, well beyond what can be accommodated in a reasonably well-planned way through the 2 existing projects that we have or through infill development. Further, many of those homes are required to be affordable to very low income households, which typically require an even larger proportion of moderate and above moderate homes in order to help offset the costs. We would prefer to get your approval and be able to include that potential growth in our housing element now, rather than return in a few months with an application stating that, yes, we do need that area to comply with the state mandate. We're pleased with the project, and for the reasons mentioned, we believe that the findings can be made and urge you to approve the project. And I appreciate your consideration and would be happy to answer any questions you have, or we have other experts who can answer those questions as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to ask questions first? Let's wait until everyone. All right, Joe Hollowell.
Good evening, Joe Hollowell, 1412 Rockhaven Drive, Modesto, California. Thank you for your time tonight. It's a pleasure to be here before you guys. I've gotten to work with most of you guys, and I think back, man, how many years it's been. I know Amy was here when we did the Aaronbell Business Park, which was the last annexation that happened in Patterson, 2012, 2013. I look out and I see a lot of the folks that were here that I've worked with, we're all either getting gray or bald, and it seems like, man, another 10 years, I don't know what we're going to look like, but we're here. You know, this project has been going on a long time, and how it got started was there was property owners in that section, and you can see there's a U there. And by the way, so you guys know, I'm here representing the Deldon family, the Ratto family, the Beaner family, and the Hollowell family, which is myself. There are properties that wanted to come in, and then there were other, and with your policy of not skipping over properties, it just made it logical to just fill that area in. That was in 2018. Conversations were happening in 2017, and none of us would have thought, wow, 5 years later, it takes so long to do anything in this state, whether it's new regulations, whether it's everything that we have to go through, corporations agreements. We have cooperation agreement with the county that we worked hard on with the city. The school district, we have a mitigation agreement in place with the school district. We're going to work out things with the irrigation districts. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, they're losing territory, they're losing funds. We can work that out. I'm not worried about that. We know those folks. They're good folks. It's probably, you know, understandable. I represent that little piece down at the bottom, you know, that, I don't know why they've made it green, but we're in, to the left of us is the Delta-Mendota Canal. So we abut a natural boundary. And to the right of us, we're in the general plan. And we're adjacent to the city limits, and we're in the city limits. And I mean, we're not in the city limits, but we're adjacent to the city limits. And the Baldwin Ranch project that's in front of us got going, and then they decided to raise interest rates out of the moon, and then kind of got scary for a while, and just trying to stay alive. And then people figured it out a little bit and said, this maybe we're going to be okay with these interest rates. And so now we've sold half of that project, and homes will be going on soon. We'll be totally sold out of that project in 2.5, 3 years. I'm choosing not to sell the other half of it right now. So we could, but we've learned over the years just to wait. I represent the business park property there that we originally was residential when we changed it to business park. I'm on the board of Opportunity Stanislaus. I can't tell you how many times we talk about, and we have gone through RFIs for the business park. We're so due. The business park that we have that's not annexed, I currently have under contract, represents about 45 acres of the new business park. And obviously that's going to be subject to this going through. But it's with a large firm that is excited about moving into this area that doesn't have a presence in California, that decided that they needed a presence in California. I know it takes a long time to do things, and maybe everything about this doesn't fit exactly, but I know what I notice about in our community in Patterson is we had support for this. I was there for other projects, whether it was Patterson Gardens going back in 2003, Walmart that we did. Now you want to have some people come out to a meeting, you bring a Walmart in. But guess what? Patterson, we probably had 80 people there. And John Moring was my partner on that, and everybody was for it, and it was so interesting to see. And I was so happy for the people of the community that came out to support it, because Walmart decided to go there after Ceres. They bought the land in Ceres, and then they just opened that one in Ceres 2 years ago, year and a half ago, after being a lawsuit for 10 or 12 years, and we were able to open the one in Patterson in 2.5 years. Patterson's a special place. It's unique. Seems like we always stir up the pot a little bit, but it always comes back home, and the folks there are just fantastic. This annexation, when it went through to the city, really got very few comments compared to what it was bringing in. It's larger than most, we'll give you that. But I think it's really worth your consideration tonight for the long-term goals, long-term planning of the city and the people. And we brought that little piece in too, to continue what we're doing just north of that. And I mean, to be frank about it, if the consideration is to go forward with this, we didn't think there would probably be another annexation for another 10 or 12 years. So we wanted to be part of it. And Larry Beaner told me, he's like, I can't wait another 10 or 12 years. I'm going to be too old. So we're excited to be part of it. We're excited to invest in the community and give back to the community we have. And we love Patterson, and we hope you can consider tonight to approve this annexation. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time, and we've had some really good meetings and good cooperation with a lot of folks, and we appreciate that. So thank you for consideration.
Thank you. Lillian Selke, I believe I pronounced that wrongly.
You did great.
Oh, thank you. That's one thing.
Good evening. My name is Lily Selke. You were close. Our office is General Counsel for West Stan and Patterson Irrigation District. These two public agencies are not in the business of opposing development. For them to engage counsel to stand here tonight and before the City Council and before the Planning Commission indicates a serious issue. Construction of this development would exacerbate existing groundwater overdraft of the overlying basin, problems the city's reliance on groundwater has contributed to for decades. The city has an obligation as a lead agency to produce CEQA documents that are accurate and supported by facts. The districts have provided data to the city on multiple occasions which shows the project area is currently served by surface water from the districts, not groundwater. In March of this year, DWR rejected the groundwater management plan for the basin underlying the city and has now sent it to the state board for possible enforcement action. In its final determination, DWR said the inadequate plan allowed for too much continued subsidence. If a subbasin goes into probation, state regulators can set pumping limits and charge hefty fines and fees under an interim plan. The EIR prepared for the project, the city's proposed determination for its sphere of influence modification, and the findings needed for the approval of annexation are unsupported for this project. As stated clearly in the district's comments on the draft EIR and in our June letter to this body, the information included by the city in its EIR regarding existing water supply on the project area is simply false and continues to be false despite evidence provided to the contrary. This body must consider the need for organized community services and the probable effect of the proposed annexation on the cost and adequacy of services. The city simply states that to meet anticipated water needs in the project area, 2 new additional wells will need to be drilled, as if there's no consequences to that action. In fact, serving the project area with groundwater from 2 new wells will have a severe impact on maintaining the physical and economic integrity of agricultural land surrounding the project area. One of LAFCO's main duties is to protect and promote agriculture. Development of the project will convert 1,300 acres of existing ag land classified by the Department of Conservation as important farmlands to urban uses. The documents presented do not discuss the impact to surrounding ag lands from this development, which include loss to the district of places of use for their surface water supplies and added costs to ag users to comply with the requirements of SIGMA because the city has not adopted its fair share of obligations. With regard to water supply, the city not only proposes to pump additional groundwater, it proposes pumping groundwater to supply lands historically irrigated with surface water supplies. The affected territory currently receives long-term average surface water deliveries from the district of approximately 2,000 acre-feet per year. The demand of the project at full build-out is 2,100 acre-feet per year, with a projected potable water demand of 1,500 acre-feet per year. Therefore, the proposed annexation and detachment will result in a shift from reliance on surface water to groundwater extraction. The city's application should be denied not only for the reasons recommended by staff, but with a direction to the city to address the consequences of the proposed development on groundwater supplies. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Come on up, please, sir. Mr. Treewaller.
Yes. I have some questions that I would like to ask, and maybe they could be answered later. I understood, or when it was explained, there's one-to-one ag land mitigation, and I'd like that explained. And if it's possible, I'm wanting to preserve farmland for food because we know that Stanislaus County is a major food provider to the whole country. And we also, again, know that we have to have food to eat, and we have to be concerned about our descendants and what they're going to do. So the one-to-one ag land mitigation is a very good idea. How is this enforced? Is this just something that is applied to this, or does this apply to all growth in all cities in Stanislaus County? I'd like that explained. In regard to Patterson, the no growth I would specify as being on the east side. However, I haven't been able to see the prime farmland area map recently, so east side of Patterson, between Patterson, the city of Patterson, and the San Joaquin River, I know that I had friends who had, almonds and before apricots in that area, and just excellent soil. So that would be good land to mitigate so that that is never developed, because as I stated earlier, if you go across or on the east side or west side of I-5, we've got thousands and thousands of farmland, not farmland, thousands and thousands of acres that can be developed for housing. We need the connection. It could even be Patterson that crosses over and starts developing on the west side of I-5 and in between the two major canals that are running in that area, which does show up in the plan here. And that's all good. One of my issues with this is we talk about affordable housing and workforce housing, and yet we never build it. It's always there, but it's never built. I don't see any multiple family housing in this plan. What happened to apartments? I mean, apartments were something that were built all over. And I mean apartments that people can afford. I mean, we have some apartments in our city, but they're all luxury apartments. You're not going to have a common worker being able to live in them, most likely. So that I find is a fault of this. I don't know how that would work as far as, making addendums or making points in here that we need more multifamily housing in this plan. So that we have, efficient use of the land and we can save our farmland. That is the whole purpose of my view, save our farmland that we're actually farming on. It's not going to be developed. I mean, I did speak to this board once before. I've been to Europe 3 times. I've been all over the United States. There is no better farmland than we have right here in Stanislaus County. But we have tons of farmland west of I-5 that we could develop. That's where we should be developing. We need the connections to that, but that's, so I think that those are my concerns, and I would like to know pretty in depth about what the one-to-one ag land mitigation means. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ron West. I live at 720 North 3rd Street in Patterson, and I'm the chairman of our planning commission out there in Patterson. I'm very, very proud of our commission. I was first elected chairman of that commission 14 years ago, and I've served in that role since then. During that time period, we have brought in an entire master plan. We've done our housing element and our zoning ordinance and all the things you have to do to make a good city. And as you can see from that picture behind you and wherever you can see it, there's one hole left in our big master plan there that we need to fill. It's been many years in the planning of that particular hole. I noticed an earlier speaker was talking about the detail. We have included in those approved plans for each of those projects all kinds of housing densities. We are looking at just a variety of housing densities like I've never really seen before. I've been in the business for 50 years. We are now putting multifamily mixtures of types that are just being developed. Rest assured that whatever plan is going to come in there and those that have been approved are including every kind of housing that we can fit into our plan. So don't worry that we have not considered that. We've considered very carefully. This project is a result of many years of work, but most importantly, it's because it's in a city that has a very unique opportunity. Patterson is the only city in this county that sits on the most major highway in North America. Nobody else is ever going to wrap themselves around that highway but us. And when I got on that commission 15 years ago, on our staff at the time and our consultant said, Patterson's a cute little town and there's some nice trees around the outside. Let's not bother those trees, let's just stay little and cute. And I said, you guys are out of your minds. We're the only people that can reach out to that highway. And over that period of time we did. We reached out and everyone said, boy, you guys are ambitious out there. And we said, yes, we are. And they said, boy, you guys are big dreamers out there. And we said, yes, we are. And they said, boy, you guys have big plans, bigger than a lot of the other guys. And we said, yes, we'll take that compliment, thank you. And we were criticized over the years for being forward-thinking and being aggressive and being proactive. And that's exactly what we hoped for. And our plan over the first 15 years of our master plan has worked out wonderfully. We've provided thousands of new jobs in our city. And I don't know of any other city that's going to be able to say, here's your population growth and here's your new jobs growth, but I'll compare ours with anybody in the state of California. Not just that, and we're not just getting our storage unit jobs, we're now getting stuff made in Patterson. And part of our Planning Commission goal over these years was to get businesses that not only get part-time jobs, full-time jobs, professional jobs, engineering jobs. We want stuff made in Patterson, California, and we are now getting businesses to do that. So I'm going to declare what we have as a success in my mind so far, and I'm hoping that you'll understand we do think big for a little town, but we can grow into it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Good evening. Mark Stone, Chairman of the Board for the Salida Fire Protection District. Our board took an unanimous vote and sent you a letter not to contest Patterson's annexation, but in support of West Stan's request for annexation without detachment. Fire districts in this county are the only district that is affected negatively by an annexation, meaning our revenue falls. School districts, sewer districts, lighting districts all increase in revenue. Our revenue falls. The only guaranteed revenue that every fire district has in Stanislaus County is the property tax, which is 1% of 1% of the property taxes. Every time an annexation takes place, that revenue is gone. Most districts have parcel assessments to help generate enough revenue to keep them in business. When an annexation takes place, that parcel assessment is gone. And yet we are still charged with providing service to every resident, business, employee, and customer that comes into our district, as well as travelers. It doesn't take a real good mathematician to figure out when the revenue stream is being depleted, you are not going to be in business too much longer onto it. So our objection is to our annexation without detachment. Every district around, especially if you border a city, faces this out there. Districts like us, we reached an agreement with Modesto for a revenue sharing agreement. If you allow that district to take that annexation without detachment, they can work a revenue sharing agreement with the city. Remembering, even in the city of Modesto, the revenue they generate off of that annexation, I'm referring to Wood Glen out north of town, is far less than what they get with annexation with detachment, because those fire service agencies can now share those parcel assessments with the cities, generating income for the cities to be able to provide that fire service that they now have to do out there. Once again, making development pay its way and not putting the burden back on the existing taxpayers inside that city that are out there. So that's something you need to think about every time you come into it. A good example of it, when I started my career with Modesto Fire in 1974, Salida was still responding to calls at Brixmore and Sisk, Orangeburg intersection, and the Rumble-McHenry intersection. Over that time, you look at how much the city of Modesto has gone north. Every time they annexed, they took revenue away from the Salida Fire Protection District, and now we have to provide the same services to the core of the district that we didn't have before. By annexation without detachment, those fees are still available to the fire service, even if they do a revenue sharing. I can guarantee you 50% of something is better than 0% of nothing. So you have to think about that. When you start allowing annexations without detachment, you are stripping the ability of those fire districts to be able to serve the public that they are charged with serving. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, one more?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Leslie Duma. I work with a firm called Woodard & Kern. Our firm has been supporting the City of Patterson on the Zacharias project, as well as we prepared the groundwater sustainability plan for the Northern and Central Delta Mendota subbasins, and are currently working with the GSAs in the subbasin on addressing the inadequacies that were identified by the Department of Water Resources. I want to speak to three things that relate to the groundwater and the groundwater basin specifically. The first is that the 6 groundwater sustainability plans that covered the Delta Mendota subbasin were deemed inadequate by DWR, but it was predominantly because they were using different terminology, different data sets, and different methodologies. And more recently, the GSAs have been working with the DWR as well as meeting with the state board to address this inadequacy. They've agreed to prepare one groundwater sustainability for the subbasin as a whole. And that's currently in progress with the intent of getting that completed before the public hearing on the inadequacy for the Delta Mendota subbasin is going to occur at the latter part of next year. Second, with respects to the subsidence, the majority of the subsidence that's occurring in the Delta Mendota subbasin is happening in the southern extent of the basin. So around Tranquility Water District, Elisa Water District, Farmers Water District, in the area that's abutting the Madera and Chowchilla subbasins. The subsidence monitoring that's been occurring in the Patterson area has been I'm trying to think of the right term, suspect, I guess, is we have several different data sets. One data set says there may be some subsidence occurring, another data set saying there isn't subsidence occurring. So that still needs to be investigated further, and the groundwater the GSAs are planning on installing extensometers and doing additional subsidence monitoring, but it's currently they're using what's called INSAR data sets that DWR is doing, and they're keeping an eye on an annual basis to confirm whether or not subsidence is occurring up in the Patterson area. So that's still a big unknown and a data gap. And then finally, with respects to groundwater and groundwater extraction. So if you think about the aquifer system, think of it like a layered cake. Okay, we have an upper aquifer, we have a lower aquifer, and where you would have icing in the middle, we have what's called the Corcoran clay. Now, the Corcoran clay, normally in the central part of the valley, is a very non-transmissive. It really separates the two aquifers. However, here in the Patterson area, especially on the west side, right around the Delta Mendota Canal, that clay peters out. And so one of the things that the city has done as part of this project is I think you called it Area B. It's the little square on the west side, the orange square on the top on the west side. That's going to be a recharge pond. And we've done geophysical surveys in that area and have confirmed that the upper aquifer and the lower aquifer are in connection in that area. So we are currently working with the city to design a recharge facility there that will do two things. It'll take water off of the Del Prado Creek as per an agreement with if and when the Del Prado Creek reservoir gets constructed. But it's also going to be used to recharge stormwater runoff that will be captured from the Zacharias development. Those ponds in the middle will be storage ponds for that recharge, and then the water will be piped up to those recharge ponds and percolated into the groundwater basin. And so by doing this, the city will actually be offsetting the additional groundwater that they'll be extracting from the subcorcoran, as well as there are areas within Zacharias development itself where we could be using low-impact development and other techniques to recharge the shallow aquifer, which will offset non-potable water use that can be extracted from that upper aquifer. So the city recognizes the issues around groundwater here and is planning to offset the additional water that it's going to need for the development as part of the development process itself. And I think that covers the 3 points. Thank you very much.
Does Patterson currently have tertiary treated water?
Not at present.
Not at present.
In the report, it says you have to expand their wastewater treatment plant because it's not, cannot service the intended users in the future. Is there an upgrade to that, or to make that water available for agriculture or for recharge?
I can't speak to that. I'll let.
I know that's in the future.
Yeah.
That is not in your EIR, but that is something, never mind, you should think about.
But there are also ways of developing exchanges with partners in the area to provide recycled water, for example, for ag irrigation purposes, and offset that with limited groundwater pumping on the ag side. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said
That was a good question, and in the future, we do plan to do that as part of our Phase 3 plans that are being developed right now, which will probably start construction in the spring. We're going into a different type of system that will allow us to go to tertiary at some point, and eventually those will be used either for recharge or for agriculture or landscape or whatever the plan comes out to be. So just want to make sure we're clear on that. I don't think we have any more speakers, but we do have our consultants here tonight. And if there's questions that come up during your deliberation, will it be okay for them to come up and answer those questions?
It's going to be fluid, yes.
Okay.
As we discuss up here, I would like to take the opportunity to call on individuals who can answer our questions that we cannot answer ourselves.
Perfect.
There were some questions asked, and although I can answer the ag land mitigation, I would like Sarah or Javier to answer the ag land mitigation one-for-one. I'm not closing the public hearing. I am keeping it open, but we're going to now be a little bit more creative on how we get information so we can make a decision.
So the one-to-one mitigation is part of their EIR, it's part of their mitigation monitoring program. It's also a condition of approval on the master plan. It's fairly standard. It does have a timing mechanism in it to make sure it gets accomplished. It can be accomplished in one of two ways, either by direct acquisition of preserving similar lands within this county at a one-to-one basis, or it can be accomplished through an in lieu fee that would accomplish that same goal. We're seeing it more and more with cities that are coming in. It's not a direct requirement of LAFCO. However, we do have an ag policy that encourages that as one of the methods or strategies to preserve ag land. I think I got everything.
Yes, you did. So you wanted to comment? No, Dave, behind you.
Sorry about that. I wasn't expecting to speak this evening, but I just got a couple of brief comments. Chairman O'Brien, members of the commission, Dave Romano, it's a pleasure to be here. I represent a few of the landowners within the area. You know, one of the challenges when we look at the size of these projects that we bring before LAFCO is that in the late 90s and early 2000s, Newman was bringing projects to LAFCO, 20 acres at a time, 40 acres at a time, and they brought 3, 4, 5 in a row. And I remember being at a hearing when LAFCO basically told Newman, don't come back here until you master plan what you're going to do. If you come to us and you bring us 20 acres and then you bring us 40 acres and then you bring us 20 acres and you're working around, how do we know it's logical, it's orderly, you're planning your community? And really from that point on, those of us in the development community have been forced to look at large projects. But when we look at a large project, as you've heard from the city of Patterson, it may take us 5 years to plan it. And then by the time we get into the city, it may take us 2 or 3 years to even get it off the ground. And so these are substantial projects that take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of cost to get to this point. And we're unable to say, well, this is perfectly 8 to 10 years of growth, and this is 12 or 15 years of growth by the time we get to LAFCO, because when we start, we may come to you many years later down the road. So this project really does fit within the intent of that policy, does fit within the intent of what LAFCO has told the cities in the past to do. And we really think it's ready to move forward. It's logical, it's orderly, it has a distinct boundary on the northern side, it's adjacent to the city on 3 sides. The city of Patterson actually reduced the residential footprint of this project by over 320 acres to help them continue to grow their business park. So the general plan was even more aggressive residentially than what comes before you today. So with that said, I just really want to thank the city of Patterson. They've worked hard on this over the last 5 years. They've spent a lot of their time and effort meeting with us and working on this. I want to thank LAFCO staff for getting it to you, getting it ready to go. And I want to thank some of our neighbors. You know, we met early with the Patterson Irrigation District. Before this project really got kicked off, the residents of the Ivy Rose neighborhood came to us and they said, you know, we're concerned, we're smaller pieces of property. If we annex, we might lose our right to irrigate. And we don't like that. Is there anything you can do? And so we approached the Patterson Irrigation District. We actually took the Central California Irrigation District policy and we modified that for PID, and the Patterson Irrigation District adopted that policy. And what that policy says is that if you're not promoting the annexation and you oppose the detachment, and LAFCO chooses to detach you anyway, we'll continue to provide you irrigation water as if you weren't detached. So we found a way to protect those ranchettes. That's kind of the cross-hatched area up there on your map. You got those requests. We made sure that wording was acceptable to the Patterson Irrigation District, and we really appreciate all their time and all their effort in working with us on that. The second thing is we've worked with the West Stanislaus Irrigation District, and they've actually put in place a policy that allows us to contract with them to get water. Development projects do take time, and we are going to work our way through that. And those who continue to farm in that window want to make sure that they can continue to get farming. And so WSID has worked with us, and we're very thankful for that as well. We've worked with the school district. They have a high school site immediately adjacent to this. They know this is the direction of growth, and they need to be able to properly plan for students. And so a lot of the people in and around the area, a lot of the agencies and jurisdictions have worked with us. We think we've been good partners to them. We've resolved those issues. This is about as square of an annexation as I've ever seen. And so we think the time is right, and we ask for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commission and staff. I'll try to be quick here. Larry Beener, 123 Baldwin Road.
So I didn't catch your name.
Oh, Larry Beener.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So I have farms around 4 sides of Patterson, and we do have some good dirt on the east and south side. But most of this annexation area, we're scratching our head because we're trying to farm on top of a gravel pit. And this year it's okay, we got a lot of water. The last 2 years on some of this federal water, we've had 0 allocation. Some of this ground hadn't been farmed. Part of it even went into bankruptcy for that reason. And I know a lot of us farmed. I don't know how many of us try to farm over a gravel pit, but it's tough. And this is a good area to annex because of those reasons. And also for the traffic, any growth has traffic elements, but I-5 is going to help us with half of this traffic problem, well, as we grow, because we're right close to I-5. So I don't plan to try to develop our east side property. It's great farmland, but some of this here, we can only farm. A lot of this water is $200 to $2,000 a foot, and the only time you're farming that is high-end crops and good market times. Half the time you can't afford to farm some of this ground. So anyway, I just want to make them answer some of the questions. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much.
And Joel, for the record, he's got more than 10 years.
All right. For the commissioners, discussion, questions, feel free to use anybody who has spoke or has not yet spoken.
It's okay. Can I ask Joel, planner, could you come up? I just want to hear, because there's always different phrasings, and I want to ask, in the villages, how many lots are not built on out of the villages?
So in the villages of Patterson, there are 3,100 units that are approved. Right now, there are about 600 lots that are complete. They're homes that are built. There are approvals in place already for about 1,500.
Okay. So 600 of the 3,100 are actually built?
Yes.
Currently. Okay. So there was a phasing plan originally on this annexation, right, in the master planning?
Yes.
Where is the phasing? Because I hadn't seen anything. I just know that was available.
Is
Was there
there
a specific road or?
Yeah, that'll work. It's a line that runs roughly, I'd say 500 feet north of the current city limits. There's capacity in the current city systems to serve those areas for water and sewer and those sorts of things. To the south, areas to the north require a new trunk line, a couple new trunk lines, and so that was how that phasing was developed.
Yeah, I just hadn't seen anything. I know that that was in the master plan though, right? When they were master planning it?
Yes.
They were talking about that.
So where is that again on this map? Where would that be?
We have a graphic in the EIR that depicts it.
So there's a red line.
We just pass it down. I just need to visually.
Quick visual.
Oh, the young one.
The young one has to always get it. I'll wait and look at it first. It's not, put it in the record. So I'm thinking it's not.
No, it's the red line, right?
Red line.
Yes, the red line
Everything south
And
of the red
so
line was the first
is phase one, yes.
Okay.
So with the Villages of Patterson project, that was approved with one master developer. When the recession hit, that project splintered, and so it was approved in 2008. With the recession, it took 10 years, 12 years before construction started, and that has started, and so it's moving at a very rapid rate.
Okay, and so can we have this in our record too? I know it's in the EIR, but I don't think I saw it.
I can kind of draw it, kind of draw it on this thing. I can kind of, if I did that right.
Okay. You have any other questions, John? While he's up here, any other commissioners have a question for him? I know you're the planner and you have your services that you have to expand to complete phase 2 of it. Do you see any issues in completing your build-outs for your services?
No, as Ken mentioned, a lot of those are in place. They'll be coming online or starting within the next year, so we expect that to be in place.
Okay, I do have.
Yeah, keep asking me
Okay,
questions.
so the detachment, where has the detachment conversation with the West Stanislaus? Have you had it? Hey, you just couldn't come to an agreement? Because this has been a issue. I was on LAFCO before I was off, but we were doing annexations without detachment, well, with detachment, but it was a phase down of payments so that, because they're not going to be servicing that area, but their budget goes like this and they still have to put fuel in and they have to put tires on. So have you had any discussions? Did it go anywhere?
With the fire district?
Yeah, with the fire district.
Ken may be better to answer that question.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, before Mr. Irwin answers the question, I think it'd be appropriate for the record to indicate that the item that all the commissioners looked at was from the draft EIR from the City of Patterson, December 2022, and it was specifically Exhibit 2-13. I'm sorry, December 2020. not 20.
So we got that?
Exhibit
I'm
2-13
sure we do.
from the draft EIR, but all the commissioners, I think, should acknowledge that they saw that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the detachment of the fire district, that's a fairly new document that we had received, and just before LAFCO, nothing came before the council when this project was going through. I know that we could come up with a plan to work with them. I had a kind of offline conversation with one of the board members to find out approximately how much revenue they were losing off of this size of a project, and it was minimal. For this project and all of our new projects, we have a public safety CFD, and that helps pay for police and fire. And so out of those funds, we can help offset any losses that they have had, and I'm happy to sit down with them and to discuss those types of negotiations. As this is going to grow into an urban area, we have paid firemen, so they're here, they're on staff, ready to go. We have the equipment that is needed for these types of fires, especially on the industrial side. However, we are partners with that district. We have partnered, we have shared paid employees as well. But we want to make sure that we have firemen stationed on staff, ready to go if there's ever a fire within the city limits. Using volunteers is not always easy to get them as rapidly as we can. They would probably be coming secondary to us. But we already have a partnership with them, and I plan to work with them to keep them whole as well.
Yeah, typically in greenfields, there's not a lot of calls, but it is, again, even though it's a small amount, it's part of their base budget that they've been operating with, and it's very difficult because they're not serving the greenfield, or lack of a better word, there are not many calls out there. That wasn't built into their expense model, right? But the revenue was built into the positive side. So it's just a difficult thing, and it is a minor amount of money, and they wouldn't have the ability generally to serve urban areas, and I completely understand that. So it's good to have the conversation because the system collapses without volunteers in the end at this point.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions going on out? My concern, although I do understand the groundwater situation about being overdraft, but the ability to recharge it. I know MS4 is out there that requires you to collect all the stormwater, clean it, and discharge it, in this case, into the aquifer. So if you have 1,600 acres, you have 12 inches of rain, which you normally have, that's 1,600 acre feet of water. That is a minimal amount of what you are withdrawing. I think it's 2.4 million. What was your, I lost it. Is it 2.4 million they're going to have to increase? 1,500? That's all you
per year.
1,500.
Okay, 1,500. I'm sorry, I thought it was more than that. Oh, yeah, I was thinking gallons. I'm sorry. You convert that into gallons, 230,000, whatever it is per acre foot. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
I do math differently.
Yeah. I'm an engineer, so I understand a lot of this, and the biggest thing with this project, it is our first that we're collecting every drop of water that we can and bringing it into the perk ponds. A lot of work has gone into that in our master plans, and our storm drain master plan consultant and our water master plan consultant worked hand in hand to make sure we were doing these exact things, because we do want to recharge. We don't want subsidence. We want to make sure that we are balancing the best we can. And so we are going to be capturing as much water as possible. We also have an agreement with the Del Puerto Irrigation District to also provide water in the future to the recharge basin as well.
Okay, and if there is a subsidence, as the consultant said there may be, do you have plans, is that with Del Porto Irrigation, to continue with the recharge to prevent subsidence?
Yeah, so we actually monitor, we monitor subsidence. That's a requirement now through Sigma. And so we would be monitoring that very closely to make sure that what we're doing is not causing subsidence. And we just want to keep in mind, we pump a fraction of what the farmland pumps. So, it's not just Patterson's little bit of growth. There's a lot of other pumpers out there in the same aquifer as well. But they're all going to be under the same guidelines, and we're all under the same GSP that is being put together right now when dealing with Department of Water Resources.
But I think the young lady who spoke, Leslie, was that you? Yeah,
Lily.
I'm sorry. She's correct. If surface water was being put on, and again, this is between Department of Water Resources, DWR, in the end will be the adjudicator. But if surface water was being applied and it's replaced with pump water, pumping out of the aquifer, there's a double whammy there. If the groundwater recharge isn't in place, when this happens, it appears you're going to be, and if you get to tertiary treated water, there obviously is an offset. So, and an acre for acre, typically ag land uses the same type of water, so there's not an issue there, except for using surface water, if it's being used now currently. And again, it's not my place to, because DWR will be the ultimate adjudicator, for lack of a better word.
Correct.
And my question to you, do you feel confident that you'll be able to provide the services and also recapture all the water you possibly can?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Lily, you want to come up here? Okay.
Thank you. I don't know if you have a specific question. I just wanted to speak a little bit as to the purported recharge. They do have a plan to recharge the upper aquifer. I believe the EIR says 1,100 acre feet per year. This recharge is not new. It is already occurring. It is from stormwater, which is already falling and already recharging into the project area. So couple that with increasing your groundwater extraction, there really is no quantifiable recharge. And with regard to the Del Porto Creek recharge, the city has no right to stormwater from Del Porto Creek, nor have they indicated any plans to obtain such a right, so it's really far-fetched. I know you guys have placed a lot of emphasis on the recharge, but it's really just not there.
Thank you.
Chairman, was there, maybe one of you guys can answer this, wasn't there a proposed reservoir that Josh Harder was pushing? Vito, you guys might know more about that, but a reservoir above Patterson, somewhere up in the hills?
Yeah.
And what will that serve? Will that serve the Patterson area, or does that serve in LA?
Well, it's beyond the, they have to trade water, right, on the system. The reservoir will put it into Del Puerto, to the aqueduct, right? That's the aqueduct. I'm looking at John now because he understands this. John? It goes into the aqueduct, right?
Well, the project was, there's probably somebody qualified to speak on.
Yeah, so the water's supposed to be used, right, it's sold for farming purposes.
Okay.
That's tertiary treated water, essentially treated water. And then as a holding.
So does that, or does it not help?
I'm not sure it's Patterson's water.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was getting
that's the
at,
issue.
right.
Good evening, Grant Gruber. I'm a consultant with the City of Patterson. We discussed the Del Puerto Canyon Dam and Reservoir in the EIR just to provide some context about its relationship to the project. So in 2020, the Del Puerto Water District certified an EIR for an 82,000 acre-foot reservoir in Del Puerto Canyon. It'd be impounded by a dam on Del Puerto Creek just west of I-5. And it would obviously provide up to 82,000. A lot of that is supposed to be off-stream storage, so they would take water out of the Delta Mendota Canal, pipe it up into the reservoir, keep it there bank it for drier years. So it sounds like it's primarily agricultural water, but to the extent the city of Patterson has agreements with them, they may have access for recharge and whatnot.
Thank you. All right, now I'd like to bring it, just keep it up here for right now for discussions or considerations. We have three options. One is to deny the proposal. One is to approve the proposal as submitted by the city of Patterson, or to continue the proposal to a future meeting for additional information. I believe the information, in my opinion, is complete. We just have to come up with discussions on option one or option two, although three is still there.
Excuse me, could I add something? I'm district counsel for the West Stanislaus Fire.
Come on, please come on up here.
My name is Bill Ross. I'm the district counsel for the West Stanislaus Fire Protection District. I think one thing about the phasing of what happens when LAFCO makes a decision, the contemplated development, and the impact, like Chairman Stone said, how that would be applied here is critical. The application for annexation didn't, it was only recently completed, right? We know that the landowners were pushing for that, but the concern of the district is the minute development starts, there's going to be an impact on adjacent areas, traffic-wise. There's the CFD granted. Once development starts, that generates funds for fire services for the city of Patterson. But I think the thing that's missing here and why the district did propose that this be done without detachment is immediately when development occurs, there's going to be traffic on areas that are in the district. And there's no adjustment that takes place to the district share of the 1%, right? But the minute the annexation goes through and is certified, and it goes to the State Board of Equalization, they lose the tax increment and base that they had in this affected territory. Now granted, it's small, but the point is there's no corresponding CFD that's in effect on the balance of the district. So in essence, the impact of that project as it's built out over whatever time period, 5 years, 10 years, impacts the district, but there's no financial offset to allow a principally volunteer department to address that issue. City manager is right. The district's also invested in paying the city for services that it provides to the district. So this is really a unique situation. It's probably extrapolated from what Chairman Stone said for Salida. So the development comes in, the fire district's already paying for a portion of the services provided to it by the City of Patterson Fire Department, but it's actually got its property taxes, which, the incremental growth here is not great. It's the loss of the property taxes for the entire affected area goes down. So that percentage amount stays the same, but the amount instantly goes down when this is filed with the State Board of Equalization. That's, look at it any other way you want, but you have to consider the efficiency of rendering services to this area. We don't dispute that, but it has an immediate effect in terms of revenue on an adjacent area to the affected area and the delivery of fire and life safety services. That's why the district proposed no detachment. The district doesn't have these variables for financing. The city does. And we said we don't oppose the development that would be authorized this. We just oppose detachment. Is there a unique situation here? Absolutely there is. But please recognize that the effect would be immediate financially on the West Stanislaus Fire Protection District once this goes to State Board of Equalization. That's why it should not be detached from the Fire Protection District, quite respectively. Thank you.
Sir, do you know how much money you're talking about roughly?
I think they did a study, and I'm going to say, if I remember correctly, it's 4,000 to 5,000, right?
Okay.
But you know, that's frozen, right? That's it. And again, there's no incremental growth that's going to occur in the balance of the district, nor do we have escalators in. There was also a small assessment, right? But the point is, the balance of the district can't increase without a vote of the people to make up for that. Right. So it's the kind of immediate mitigation that could go along with this project. Granted, there's multiple changes of organization here. We recognize that, but I think it's time that this kind of, death from 1,000 cuts. All right, so it's this one. This is 5,000. Then there's another one. Then there's another 5,000. There's no way for the district to offset this. I think, as Chairman Stone noted, unlike other areas, there's no countywide fire assessment that mitigates it like in other counties. I think it was mentioned in some counties, and I'm familiar with Fresno, they do both things. They have a 10-year agreement where they gradually decrease the property tax. But because the impact here is, on the one hand, quantifiable and known, that amount, that would even be welcome. But there hasn't been conversation, by the city manager to the district on this. The district and the city are interrelated in many ways. But it's delicate. We think this is a common sense way to address an issue to preserve the ability to protect lives and property. Thanks.
Thank you.
One other. So you're saying, just so I get this right, 5,000 a year or a month?
5,000 a year.
I'm sorry? Year.
Just a year, 5,000 a year?
Assessment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the minute this becomes effective, all the taxes get realigned.
Sure, of course.
Right, but this CFD funding for the city isn't going to be immediate.
Right.
There's going to have to be somebody that goes in there that generates money for that CFD. But the effect on the fire district is immediate and ongoing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please. I was expecting this.
Due to the amount that they do get, we would have no problem whatsoever offsetting that, even before the CFD was to occur. We want to continue working with them. We could even work in some type of escalator that helps them as well. And keeping in mind, we're going to offset that, and they're still going to be whole, but we will be actually taking over the actual fire suppression in that area. But we're willing to do that, and we still have to go back to council after we get done with LAFCO, and I'll make sure that we have that conversation with the fire district, and I just want to make sure they're left whole.
All right. Any questions before he steps away? I thank you on that. That's a good common sense approach, and I urge you to make sure that that goes through your council.
Thank you.
Although that's a consideration, doesn't, sorry. Any other comments, questions?
I'd like to comment on that. I'm John Murray, I live at 9800 Cox Road, Patterson. So we have a lot of discussion. I'm the chairman of the West Stanislaus Fire Board. And not only with these annexations, the detachment, I see your point, $4,000 or $5,000 a year on a budget of $1.3 million is not a whole lot. But when these cities, when our town grows, our surrounding area, the accidents, I-5 is a responsibility. So there's a lot going on there. And I think that the West Stanislaus Fire District has worked well with the city of Patterson in the past. And I think we can continue to that with our council bill. This detachment, I'm not sure exactly how we should handle that. But we have a good working relationship with the city of Patterson at this time. And I think it's important because that's the nucleus of what goes on our west side. But we do need it. We're really struggling with our revenues now on our fire district. Our budget's upside down now for the first, well, we've done a good job saving pennies, but we're about ready to go upside down. So we are going to need some help in the rural area from the city as the city grows. And I think that we can work together on that. I have no doubt. Another point I'd like to make, these rural fire departments, me as a rural resident, it's so important to me to keep our rural fire departments because they understand our community and they understand what assets we have in emergencies. They understand roads, dirt roads. They just understand our community so well. And with a smaller town, our fire department works within the town, but we have a huge rural area that needs some response. So again, I think we can work well with the city, but I do think we're going to need some kind of cooperation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Michael wants to speak.
Mayor?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I want to speak on this issue regarding West Stanislaus County Fire Protection District. I assure the board members that I will not, as mayor, allow them to go on hold. I will make sure that we provide direction to the city manager through the city council that we take care of them as we expand our city. It is eminently critical that we get this annexation done to provide services for our current citizens and to provide for future expansion of our amenities that we need in the city of Patterson. So I want to make sure that I reassure each and every one of you as a member of public safety that I will not allow the West Stanislaus County Fire Protection District to go unprotected as we expand the city of Patterson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, at some point I have to close public hearing. Anyone from the commission need anything else before I close it?
Pizza.
Public hearing is now closed. I bring it to the commission for a determination.
I guess, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was just going to cover a couple things. Back in the day, Supervisor Bill O'Brien taught me about never leave the outer lining areas uncovered and not capable of taking care of themselves. It was kind of his big thing. And so I hear fire, and I'm thankful that the mayor got up, and I assure you that I trust his words, that he will make sure that you guys don't just end up out there. I'm impressed because the arena numbers are super high, and you guys are actually going to achieve that. And I know that the supervisor Condit that works with the West Side primarily has been dreaming about having YCCD and a hospital over there. And this all adds to that community so that they don't have such a far reach. Once they grow, they'll have all these things that they need. So I think it's an outstanding growth concept. It fills it out nicely, and that's all I have.
Okay. Go ahead. Very good. First, thanks everybody for being here. Ken, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while, but thanks for being here and all the effort and everything that's gone into this. So this is, as on LAFCO here, we wear a different hat, right? And this is the thing, and we've got different rules and regulations that we're supposed to follow here, different than what we wear in our hats as supervisors or city councils or whatever the case may be. So so we need to look to that for our guidance on how these things are supposed to go and how we're supposed to move forward with these things. Growth, great. Growth is good, and I think this is all great that what we're talking about here. does this fall within the scope of LAFCO? So I'm trying to, in my mind, make this fit into what LAFCO tells us we're supposed to do as far as expansion and annexations and expansions of spheres and annexations. So a couple concerns that I have when I look at this, and again, with my LAFCO hat on as I look at it, I think we said 1,627 acres currently available in Patterson right now, I think within your city limits right now. And we talk about RENA numbers, which we know Patterson, I think it's 3,400 or something like that, 3,400 RENA numbers, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers, that for the sixth cycle, I think, has been presented that what Patterson has to fill, that 1,600 acres could take care of the RENA numbers for Patterson just in itself. So when we think that, oh, we need this to make our RENA numbers, to get our Regional Housing Needs Assessments numbers, I'm sure we could get 3,400 houses in the 1,600 acres right there. We're talking about, I see somebody shaking his head, but we're talking about, I'm sorry, what's it?
1,000 acres of business park inside
The 16.
Oh, the 6 is 1,000, so it's 600 acres then of, okay. So anyway, there's still numbers there that we talk about that we could help take care of our RENA numbers. It's not like we need only this project to do that. So that's a concern a little bit about. And when we, we talk about our duties as far as LAFCO and how we're supposed to do things logically and orderly and timely is part of what our marching orders are here. We're looking at things 20 years out here, and I know annexation, and you're saying, well, it takes a long time for these things to happen. I think we've had several people come up and talk about how these things take a long time to happen. That's why we have to not go with the 10 years out for annexation and 20 years for sphere of influence. We've got to change those rules, because that's not fair and that's not the way it works. But that's kind of how we're supposed to do this. That's how we're supposed to, the rules we're supposed to follow when we look at these projects. And again, I'm not against the project. I think this is great. I look at it as an overreach as far as I'm concerned. I look at the phases. We've talked about the original phases here that we've talked about. And I think it would be a much better, these are the type of things that cause urban limit lines to happen on ballot measures. These are the type of overreaches that cause people then to want to go do an urban limit line and try to do things to prevent these type of overreaches from happening. That's the way I look at this. And so I would much rather see this happen in a phased approach and not with the annexations of this whole thing. I'd love to see Patterson come back here with a phase one, a beginning phase approach on this. I'd like to see us then, if Patterson comes back, I guess we'd have to deny this without prejudice to do that, allow Patterson then the ability to come back here. And then, if I'm right, is how that would work, allow them then to come back here without having to wait a year to come back. And then we could address some of these issues like the West Stanislaus, fire issues, detachment without detachment, the water issues that we're talking about here, get those things worked out too. And anyway, that's the way I would look at this. That's kind of my view of how we should move forward with this thing. Move forward, I'd give Patterson a chance to come back, and just not with such an overreach here, and with a lot of infill areas that they can deal with right now. I'd rather see that happen than us add in another giant area as this one. So,
thank you. Okay. So not many times have I ever sat up here where there was a recommendation of denial from the staff on a project. And I'm sure it's happened, it just hasn't happened while I've been sitting up here, the years that I've been sitting up here. So that kind of raised the bar in our discussion. I've spent the last 2 days, I've been in Sarah's office 3 or 4 times. I've been in the county's office. I mean, I've been trying to find numbers on what is reasonable for growth. I see different numbers. Patterson is a fast-growing area. Over the last 20 years, they are the fastest-growing community. But if you look at the last 10 years, Newman outpaced them, and similar growth to Houston and a couple other communities. So it slowed down, but it was the hottest market from '99 to 2005, bar none. And so that could happen again. So I got this processing. I looked at the the RENA numbers, and the RENA numbers for the 5th cycle, which was the previous 8 years, was about 2,500 for Patterson and 21,300 countywide. Of those, I went to the Department of Finance just to see how many were built. And they're estimations, so these numbers could be off a little bit, but they're not off much. We only built 5,204 units countywide in the last RENA cycle, and the estimate was 21,330. So RENA numbers are this number, and now they've pumped them up again, and it's put us all in a panic. The county, the 9 jurisdictions, trying to find land that is required to be zoned to meet those RENA numbers, although no one has ever hit the RENA numbers. It's just not, it's not feasible for us to hit 34,000 in the next 8 years. Interest rates are up, the economy is not trending in the right direction, but if some place is going to grow, it's going to be more likely on the west side of the county. I don't doubt that. But what does that mean? I think in this last, it looked like Patterson, the information I found, it built 765 units in the RENA cycle, but it didn't have 22. I think we're missing 22. So if you use that, so I added a year on the backside. So growth has come down, obviously, and again, I'm trying to think of this logically, what they need in inventory, because I don't ever want to sit up here and suppress housing from being built because we know we're short on housing. The flip side is one of our charges is to push infill, and if there's not pushback from sprawl, being able to just take open ground and build, why would anyone want to do infill projects and not build on new green fields? It's easier, it's more logical in every aspect, and it's cheaper. There's no doubt it's cheaper for the developer, and you can put in better roads. There's a lot of positives to building greenfield. So when I work through my logic, and again, this is a long-winded way of saying what does RENA look like for the next 8 years, because our planning window, there's that word imminent, but imminent is out 10 years, really. You should have a 10-year inventory of land, and you should have at least a 20-year window, and that's the planning window. So I don't see the sphere of the community being incorrect. It's probably the phasing component of it, because if you have 2,500 houses still to be built on one side, and if you said half the project, and this is just me being penciling, that's another 2,500, it's 5,000 houses over the next RENA cycle, and we only built 5,000 county-wide. So I again, no matter what logic I use, having 7,500 houses available over the next 10 or 15 years, I know the email said that you can hit your RENA numbers, we just haven't done it. And so as one of our charges here, it's about sprawl. I think your growth, the master plan is very logical, and I got to commend the city of Patterson because, you know, other than the southern portion, the Baldwin little finger on the bottom, it is logical. And that's kudos to you, because that's not what every community is doing. I think this is well thought out. I think it is from my standpoint as a LAFCO commissioner, and again, Terry had said, we wear a different hat here. I take off my jurisdiction hat, and we have specific charges we're supposed to do. And I think you meet some of those charges, and I think that some of it is too much, doing the whole master plan. It's difficult for us to assess the total cost to a community. How much more if you phased it in 2 phases? You know, is it going to be twice as much? Is it going to be a third as much? But I don't look again at it as our charge here on LAFCO. I see it as us being able to say, hey, logical RENA numbers based on population growth. What I've seen in the past 10 years is different from the 20-year outlook. And 2050 comes pretty quickly, but 2050 is 66,000. The 7,500 houses that you have with this plan and the other plan, and you have a lot of industrial area, and nothing ever precludes someone from converting industrial area over to housing. That's a possibility, but it seems like there's enough land inventory in industrial currently, and taking a portion of this, to me, it seems logical. And once again, not to do this in phases. And if someone told me otherwise, again, this is Vito's view of the world, and for what it's worth, luckily I have a vote up here, but if I heard otherwise, something that was so compelling, but I can't find anything compelling on growth of the community and or the RENA, because I think you can get your RENA numbers in with a portion of that. I think there's a way to do it. We're finding how to find 2,000 houses in the county, or 20-some hundred houses, by going lot by lot in the community of Denair, in the community of Keys, all infill projects. And so I think it can be done. I'm not so worried about that component. It's what is it that you need in a current growth pattern so that we're not suppressing growth. If a house wants to be built in Patterson, if a developer wants to build a house, then they should be able to build a house inside this planning window. But taking a 20-year supply, what I consider, if I do the numbers in my mind, it's easily a 20-year supply of land for housing. I can't imagine growth being so great, and that seems like sprawl to me. That's just my perception based on the numbers I ran. And again, I'm no expert, but that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Well, I wish I had the crystal ball to know where this economy's going. As a public member, I'm a strong believer in local government. And this plan, which I think is pretty impressive, this plan has gone through their commission, planning commission, the council, with unanimous support. And it has the support of their local elected officials, from their supervisor to their assembly member. And I just don't believe in, when it's that unanimous locally, I don't believe we should be overriding them. And I do think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we run the cost of housing up in government through mandates, slowing processes down. And I want my daughter, I want my granddaughters to be able to live in the valley. And with the cost of housing and the limited supply we have right now, it's darn near impossible. And that's frustrating to me. And so, I mean, in my mind, we need to get some rooftops built. This, I think, is a terrific plan. It phases in, starts next to the city, so it's orderly. So for those reasons, I'm going to support this.
Comment or not?
I already did.
Okay. All right. Is it logical to plan that far out with what you have? I think it is. Once you start a project, let's say you start a housing project from the green grass, it'll take you 4 years before you get the infrastructure, you get the permit, and start building the housing. I've experienced that personally with what we're doing on the other side of the county. The opportunities are also something you should consider. The opportunities of the availability of your business park industry that you want to build things in Patterson and say, hey, this is from Patterson, I understand that. And that is something that you have to be able to be prepared for, ready for, because when you have the next boom, it has to be right there. It can't be delayed another 5 years in the planning to get through, to come on up and say, hey, I'm ready to go. I do have a concern about the inventory that you have available for you in other areas of the city, your numbers that you could still build for housing. However, before this would even become available for construction, you're still building there. And so your inventory, if I understand, you have 1,500 units either being built, being built, planned, or approved for building. So that's a long process for each one of those. And when one phase gets done, the other one follows. Now, striking the RENA numbers. For me, the RENA numbers not only are what you're supposed to build, but it's also what you have to be able to show you have that capacity to build. It is not arena number, well, let's see if we make it. You have to show, what is it, community and housing development, that you have that inventory available to build. So that's what you're doing with your housing element. So this will take your arena numbers and say, okay, I can do that over the next 8 years. There's no way you're going to really do much in this area that you have proposed until you get your infrastructure started. You get your streets in, you get your electrical, your sewer, your lights. You got all of that that has to be done. And then you have to satisfy the schools, the parks, and what others. So I think not only is it orderly and logical, as the Board of Supervisors agreed and the county agrees, I think that it is orderly, logical, and in the future for obtaining opportunities as you move forward. Without grasping opportunities, you languish, and that's what we do in certain areas, and I do not want to languish. So I believe this is it's a big project. And no matter how the vote goes, if it's phasing or however that may be, but I do not want to stymie this project and piecemeal it to where when opportunities strike, you're not prepared for the opportunities. Now, we have to take into all the considerations from LAFCO. We do. We took care of the ag land and the services. And yes, there is a large inventory of land that you can build housing on, which you are in the process of planning and to build. So I support what's going on this, and I do believe that your balance is going to show that when you have either the businesses or the light commercials or the industries coming on in, you'll be prepared. In other cities, they struggled to get their planning done to admit companies to come on in. Turlock did it well. And so that was unnecessary, but it was done well. So I think that we have to be forward-thinking, not only the opportunities here in the little city of Patterson, but also at Crow's Landing Road. The opportunities there, they want people to be able to work when that gets developed. I know that's far-fetched, but we have to take a holistic approach to all of it. I struggle with stopping the opportunities for the city, and I hope we go forward with this, and good luck with it. Go ahead.
Okay, just if there's no further comment, I'm going to make a motion that we accept staff recommendation and we deny it without prejudice.
Second that.
We have a motion to deny without prejudice and a second. I'll have roll call, please.
Commissioner Berryhill?
No.
Commissioner Bublak?
No.
Commissioner Chiesa?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien?
No.
Commissioner Withrow?
Yes.
Okay. That means the second option is available. With the second option?
Option 2, I make a motion to support option 2.
Second.
Okay, with that option, we have to certify as a responsible agency under CEQA that the commission has considered the environmental document prepared by the city of Patterson, adopt the municipal service review, determine the municipal service review for the city of Patterson is statutorily exempt from the environmental review, adopts the written statements of determinations related to the service review required by the Government Code Section 56430, adopt a written statement of determination related to the determination of the sphere of influence, adopt the sphere of influence for the city of Patterson as proposed, and approve the reorganization consistent with the annexation of the city of Patterson and the attachment of the Del Porto Water District, Patterson Irrigation District, West Stanislaus Irrigation District, and the West Stanislaus Fire Protection District, with the exception of what was stated by the mayor of Patterson and for the sustainability of the West Stanislaus Fire Protection District. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Berryhill?
Aye.
Commissioner Bublak?
Yes.
Commissioner Chiesa?
No.
Commissioner O'Brien?
Yes.
Commissioner Withrow?
Nope.
Motion carries 3-2. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and I know the discussion and the determination is very difficult. We all have our concepts of, and we tried following the rules of LAFCO. And I know that there were some exceptions, not strong, but there were some exceptions from LAFCO, and I appreciate the staff work on this and your recommendations. With that, commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments?
Yeah, it's my anniversary, and I'm here at a LAFCO meeting with my wife sitting out there enjoying this. So, thank you, sweetheart.
Happy anniversary.
I take my wife
Any
to the
other
tractor
comments?
show.
Executive officer? We're still in the meeting, please.
Keep the next commission date as tentative. We'll let you know if it necessitates a cancellation, in which case their next regularly scheduled meeting would be September 27th, 2023. We'll be moving forward with the Patterson proposal and scheduling a protest hearing, which will likely happen in the next 50 or so days. So we'll be preparing for that.
Thank you. Legal, did I skip anything I was supposed? Okay, good. All right, with that, we are now adjourned and tentative for 23 August.